Well, the NHL draft is almost upon us, so who are the Edmonton Oilers taking a look at? We will go through one potential draft target for the Edmonton Oilers. Plus, Kailer Yamamoto didn't exactly have the season I thought he did. We will have more on that in his report card for the season. Plus, the Edmonton Oil Kings are your WHL champions. They're off to the Memorial Cup for the first time since 2014. We will have all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. I hope you are having a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As mentioned on today's episode, we're going to take a look at a potential draft prospect for the Edmonton Oilers, a guy who is just in the Oilers building, actually, in fact, on Monday night and on Saturday as well. For the Seattle Thunderbirds, that is Reid Schaefer. He has been jumping up on the draft board, so we'll talk about him in just a bit. Plus, Kailer Yamamoto had a very strong offensive season. In fact, set a whole bunch of career highs, but his defensive work, not so impressive. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Plus, yes, the Edmonton Oil Kings are your NHL champions or winners or trophy holders of the WHL, and they will be heading off to St. John, not St. John's, St. John for the Memorial Cup, as we will get more into that as well. A lot of exciting names to watch on that team and in that tournament as well. So we will get to all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Plus, we're on YouTube as well. If you haven't shifted over to YouTube as well, if you haven't subscribed already, please do, because it's a little bit of a different experience. You get the Ilya Brzgalov jersey behind me. He's only game. Well, you have to be mad. Little Tommy Sallow over my shoulder, and we'll change things up here and there. But enough from me. Let's get into Reid Schaefer, as he was kind of a storyline for the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL final. As, yes, the Edmonton Oilers are going to be picking around the 29th spot, or in the 29th spot, I should say, this year in the draft, which is kind of nice, actually, when you take a look at it. I know the Oilers have a storied history of picking quite early in the draft, but we are actually picking quite late this time. So the targets are kind of different, right? You know, the top of the draft, you know who you're picking. You know it's going to be either this guy or this guy, or it's going to be, well, in Montreal's case, it's Shane Wright, right? Um, but when you're back here at 29, you're mostly picking either the best possible player at any position, or you're being smart. And that is what I think the Edmonton Oilers will do. And that is why I think Reid Schaefer is actually a very smart pick for the Edmonton Oilers. He is not really ranked very high, especially before the playoffs, on many lists except for one. Let me read out where he is on current rankings. Bob McKenzie has him at 79. McKean has him at 64. NHL Central Scouting has him as the 31st rated what are they called? North American skaters. They call them North American. They split them up between the North American skaters and the European skaters. So in the grand scheme of things, he isn't actually like the 31st best player. He's just the 31st best player who plays in North America. 97 for on draft prospects, which is kind of fitting for Connor McDavid, and 55 for Smart Hockey. But notice I didn't mention Craig Button. Craig Button currently has Reid Schaefer at 21 on his list. So it seems like, in a lot of the talk around Reid Schaefer has been that he has been kind of not necessarily a late bloomer, but he's been shifting up and rocketing up a lot of draft boards recently. And there's a reason why. If you caught any of the WHL final on TSN, then you saw just a very strong hockey player. He is a very good hockey player. He was an 8th-round pick for the Seattle Thunderbirds back in 2018, and now he's grown into himself. He's 6'3", 213 pounds. He's an imposing guy on the ice. He's a strong power forward type player for the Thunderbirds, and he's able to have the offensive touch. The quote that I want to read out that I really thought was the epitome of this player and what really draws a lot of scouts and people and me myself to Reid Schaefer as the player he is. And this is from Matthew Soma, who is from Smart Hockey, SMAHT, like, like Boston. The quote goes, "He sets the tone physically and creates space with strength. Instead of using speed and skill, he's imposing. He goes into those tough areas. He goes and wins puck battles and board battles. He doesn't care how he's going to do it, but he's going to win hockey games. That's the type of player Reid Schaefer is. Plus, he's difficult to get off the puck, and he is such a shooter, man. For a guy who's 6'3", 213 pounds, he needs some work on his skating, but he's got time to develop that. That has been kind of the knock on Schaefer, but it's not exactly horrible either. He's got some breakaway speed as well to get away from the defenders and really create and start an offensive possession and really take a hold of an offensive possession. That's what he does. Weirdly enough, he may be a winger. He may not necessarily be that star player for the Seattle Thunderbirds or for anybody for that matter. But what he does is he really sets the tone. The fact that he can do that and play such a quarterback type offensive play, I guess, is impressive for a winger. Let's go through some of his stats here. This year was insane for him. His first full year in the WHL, because in the last couple of years, in 2020, 2021, now it was a shortened season. He only played 18 games. He didn't get a goal. He got 2 assists there. In 2019, he was back and forth between the AJ and the WHL. He only played 7 games, no goals, 1 assist there. But this year, something clicked for the kid. In 66 games played, 32 goals, 26 assists, 58 points out of almost nowhere, it seemed like. And Reid Schaefer just came out there and really took advantage of the time that he got with the Seattle Thunderbirds. The Seattle Thunderbirds became one of the best teams, obviously, in the WHL as they went on to face the Edmonton Oil Kings in the final, as they did lose on Monday night. So I'm sorry to bring that up. But he can shoot, man. If you're able to go find some shooting highlights of Reid Schaefer, go and do that. He can shoot from anywhere and has a precise and heavy shot and can shoot from distance. Like, it can fool a goaltender from the blue line. In the AJHL as well, I should say, played a couple games for the Spruce Grove Saints in 2019, 2020. He played 33 games, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points. Now, the interesting thing about Schaefer as well is his penalty minutes. Now I know you hear penalty minutes, you go, whoa, why is that a good thing? Now, when you see a guy who can put up points and is also putting up like absurd amount of penalty minutes, there's a difference between getting like 50 and 60 penalty minutes because you're taking stupid tripping penalties. But if you're getting up into the 80s, 90s, and hundreds, obviously, in 66 games played, there's probably a little something there, and that's because of his bite. His physical play is what really brings Reid Schaefer to the top. And the fact that that's what brings him to the top, and the entire time we've been talking about him has been his offensive upside, That is pretty impressive. But yeah, those penalty minutes this past year, 88 penalty minutes in 66 games, 14 and 18 in 2020, 2021, and 9 in those 7 games in his first year in the WHL. The other thing that I wanted to mention as well was his stats from the playoffs. Now, the interesting thing about Reid Schaefer this past season was that he was very, not necessarily goal heavy, but he had more goals than he had assists in the regular season. However, when it got to the playoffs, in 25 games played, 6 goals for Schaefer, 15 assists for 21 points in 25 games. He can change his game however he needs to win a hockey game. That's all he wants to do is win a hockey game. It's kind of the perfect guy you want on your team. I would probably put him for a projection of a player. He's probably going to be a middle 6 guy. And the thing that a lot of people like about Reid Schaefer, and this will be my final point on Reid Schaefer, is that his ceiling is high, but his floor is not exactly that low. His floor, you know what you're going to get out of a player like Reid Schaefer. As long as he keeps developing and can play in the NHL, you're going to get a solid, serviceable hockey player. And that's what you're hoping for at the 29 spot. So, Reid Schaefer, the first player that we go over in the draft profile. We've got a couple more exciting ones coming through here. Reid Schaefer, I do really like. I think he could fit in the Oilers system quite well. We shall see. Oh, and I've gone this far without mentioning, he's a local kid. He's from the Edmonton area, played OHA Edmonton, obviously played for the Spruce Grove Saints. So, yes, a local kid as well. So that kind of helps too. Let's move on to Kailer Yamamoto. And how did he do this past season? Very strong season, as we've mentioned, and as you clearly know. But there were some things that I wasn't a big fan of. So we'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about our next partner. This episode, is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders on their computer, choosing the only brand that their warehouse happens to carry. You have the computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Why choose to keep spending 30, 50, and even 100% more for the same parts at that chain store or even at the car dealership? At that same Honda Odyssey, a fuel pump for that Honda Odyssey at your local chain store is about $353. On Rock Auto, $216. Save time and money while using Rock Auto. Plus, Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution for all your auto parts needs. Head to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. And just before we move on, we also have an important favor to ask of you, our listeners. We've put together a survey that so we can learn more about our listeners and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On Podcasts. All you have to do is head to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes the survey will be entered to win a chance will qualify for a chance to win, one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift card. So you can get a $100 Ticketmaster gift card. Ooh, hello, words are fun. You can get a $100 Ticketmaster gift card just for completing the survey. To take your audience survey, head to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now. Thank you so much for your help. Alrighty. As mentioned, hey, I don't think we've taken our hydration break yet. I'm doing this in the morning, so let's take a breath. This is coffee today, so no water. Alrighty, hydration break over. Let's move over to Kailer Yamamoto. Had a very strong season for Kailer Yamamoto, a guy who's going into RFA. I guess I was going to say UFA, but free agency. I was going to say not UFA, but RFA, restricted free agency. Looking for a new contract with the Edmonton Oilers, and made a pretty solid case. The argument for heading into the season was very much: are you going to keep Jesse Puljujarvi or Kailer Yamamoto? Well, we're sitting here today and we realize that it's Kailer Yamamoto that you're going to have to re-sign, and Ryan McLeod over Jesse Puljujarvi, and even Evander Kane right now as well. But why did Kailer Yamamoto become the guy that a lot of Oilers fans want to re-sign? Well, 20 goals will help. 21 assists, 41 points. All of those career highs for Kailer Yamamoto. Pretty solid. Also played in 81 games this season. Also a career high. Pretty good considering the knock, obviously, around Kailer Yamamoto is his size. He's not the biggest guy, and I sympathize with him because I'm also under 6 feet tall. But so I understand the criticism that he gets for his size. However, the forechecking that this kid does is the forechecking of a man who stands 6'4". I talked a lot about Kailer Yamamoto's ability to go into corners and get those pucks, kind of similar to Reid Schaefer, honestly, and win those hockey games, and how much the Edmonton Oilers really missed it in games 3 and 4, I guess, against Colorado. That is the thing that Kailer Yamamoto really does well. He's kind of under your skin. You don't really necessarily expect him, and then all of a sudden, he just came up from underneath you, upended you, and now the puck's on the stick of either Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, and it's probably going to end up in the back of your net. That's what Kailer Yamamoto does. Like he said, when the Edmonton Oilers were having his draft meeting with him, he said, they asked him, why should we draft you? And he said, because if you don't, I'm going to make sure you regret it every time we play you. Sounds good. I don't want to regret anything. You come on, you come play for my team. And the Oilers haven't regretted it. Also in the playoffs, this is kind of where the knocks begin for Kailer Yamamoto. Now, yes, obviously a great offensive season, blossomed and flourished under Jay Woodcroft, and really created a full 200-foot game for him. Played on the penalty kill at times. He just a really strong 200-foot player. But this is kind of where the knocks will start to come for Kailer Yamamoto. In 14 games played for in the playoffs, I should say, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points. Now, this was the issue last playoffs against the Winnipeg Jets. Was everyone was going, okay, well, the Oilers can't win this series unless it's if Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are scoring all their goals. That's what happened. Leon Draisaitl led the team in goals in that series against the Winnipeg Jets with 2. Kailer Yamamoto, his career playoff totals, now has 2 goals because of these 2 goals in these playoffs. You need more production in important games. Now, on the flip side, he did also have, like, he didn't necessarily hit the score sheet or the goal sheet too often, but what he did do was create those chances to get the pucks back to the point and create an offensive possession, and you don't really get credited with that. There's no stat really that I can find, unless I'm sure a Corsi or analytics guy can go, there's this one. But that's what he does well. And that's not recorded on the goal sheet or score sheet, I guess, and that can't really be reflected. And that, I think, it kind of deters a lot of people away from Kailer Yamamoto. And but I'm a big fan of Kailer Yamamoto, even though that this is kind of a tough score line or stat line. He still did what he needed to. Now, the other thing for Kailer Yamamoto, I mentioned his 200-foot game. His defensive game has developed, but it hasn't developed the way that I really thought it would or thought it has. He needs more work on it. Goals against per 60 minutes. You guys know that that is one of my favorite stats ever. Yeah, so that basically means goals against per 60 minutes. How often, if you were on the ice for 60 minutes, again, that is hypothetical, but your hockey game is 60 minutes. So this is how you base it around. How often is there a goal against in those 60 minutes you are on? For Kailer Yamamoto is 2.93 at 5-on-5, which it sounds not too bad, to be honest with you, but that is good enough for 23rd on the team. That is from everybody who played this year. Like, I didn't even realize Slater Cuckoo played 19 games for the Oilers, but he did. I checked it. Also, in all scenarios, Kailer Yamamoto had a 3.3 goals against per 60 and was 20th on the Oilers. So not fantastic numbers there. Plus, this year, the first time or one of the first times in his career that he hit the minuses in his career. He finished the season -1 and finished the playoffs actually -6. So not a great defensive showing for Kailer Yamamoto. Has a lot of defensive work to do. Still developed a great defensive game, but still has a lot of work to do. But we'll end it on a good note for Kailer Yamamoto. He did set a career high as well in shooting percentage at 17 and a half. That's pretty good. Over 81 games. Shoot more, young man. I am going to give Kailer Yamamoto a final grade of B. I think a B is fair. I was going to go B plus, but it just the defensive stats just kind of lost me a little bit. But it is what it is. We shall move on to your WHL champions, the Edmonton Oil Kings. Oh, what a game it was. A big time W for the Oil Kings as they win their third Edge Cup in their modern era, I guess. So we will get in that in just a second. But first, I want to tell you all about our sponsors over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA Finals. It is now 3-2 for the Golden State Warriors. That was interesting, to say the least. Quite the game. Draymond Green had, well, temper tantrum, but that's Draymond Green. Hey, as well, you can also take a look. I'm not sure. Obviously, the Memorial Cup lines haven't come out yet, but you might be able to bet on the Memorial Cup as well. You've been able to bet on CHL all throughout the season on Bet Online, so take a look for those Oil Kings as well. Plus, yes, the Stanley Cup Finals start tonight. Who do you think is going to win the Conn Smythe? I genuinely think Conn Smythe. Yes. I genuinely think it's going to be Cale Makar. That kid is just phenomenal. Like, they're my goodness. I'm going Cale Makar. I believe he's third on BetOnline's list of most likely to win it. Maybe first. He should be first. Plus the NFL futures as well. The new season is on the way. Seems like Lamar Jackson's heading to training camp as well. Anyways, BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and much more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts. Alrighty, we shall move on as I reach over and grab my notes. For the Edmonton Oil Kings, there isn't really much for me to take a look at really here for the Edmonton Oil Kings. Is I have been an Edmonton Oil Kings fan from day one. I went to a whole bunch of games when I was younger. I was on the Cup runs in 2012, or there for the Cup runs in 2012, in 2014, and now the Edmonton Oil Kings win their third NHL title in the modern era. They've won it, as I mentioned, 2012, 2014, and this year. They also won it in 1971 and 1972. I put down here, but I believe it was 1974, not 72. But either way, fifth in franchise history. And I'm telling you, this team is just fantastic. Let me read off some of the names on this roster for you. Let me see if I'll see if you know any of them. Dylan Gunther, ever heard of that guy? Went ninth overall to Arizona last year. Josh Williams, a Medicine Hat Tigers prospect or product, I should say, who then moved to the Oil Kings. I think Josh Williams should get a shot with some pro team as well. Jake Neighbors, ever heard of him? Went 26th overall to the St. Louis Blues. Jalen Lipin, ever heard of him? Went to the seventh round to the Chicago Blackhawks. Justin Sordiff, third round pick to the Florida Panthers. Carter Such, a homegrown talent for the Oil Kings as well. Jakob Demick, who went to the Vegas Golden Knights at 128th overall. Caden Gooley, a first-round pick for the Montreal Canadiens. Simon Kubicek has been a fantastic player for the Oil Kings as well. Luke Prokop, third-round pick for the Nashville Predators, an Edmonton product, I should say, and Sebastian Kosha as well, the 15th overall pick. I always got him confused for Volstead, where they went, but 15th overall to Detroit. What a team for the Edmonton Oil Kings. And I mean, just looking at Team Canada alone, the Oil Kings have 5 Team Canada World Junior Hockey players on that team. So even after the Memorial Cup here, the Oil Kings are going to have a lot of games played in August as well. But like we mentioned, they did go on to play the Seattle Thunderbirds, which, like we did also mention earlier on today as well, Reid Schaefer's team, Kevin Korchinski on that team as well. A lot of talented hockey players, a lot of experience on that Seattle Thunderbirds team, and gave the Oil Kings their biggest fight in the playoffs. In the Edmonton Oil Kings played the Lethbridge Hurricanes, which they swept in 4 games, the Red Deer Rebels, which they swept in 4 games, the Winnipeg Ice, who was supposed to be like the second best team in the country, with guys like Connor Geekie and what's his name? Connor Geekie and the guy that I really want for the Edmonton Oilers. Matthew Savoy. I don't want him for the Edmonton Oilers that bad. Geekie was who I wanted. Matthew Savoy, Carter Savoy's brother. There we go. Winnipeg Ice, supposed to be one of the best teams in the country. They beat them 4-1, and then the Seattle Thunderbirds 4-2. Now they head over to St. John for the Memorial Cup. Their first game is on June 21st. The interesting thing for the Edmonton Oil Kings is their first game on the 21st. Pretty familiar face for Oilers fans. Xavier Bourgault's Shawinigan Cataracts goes for, is game 1 for the Edmonton Oil Kings. That'll be on TSN if you're in Canada, wherever you may be, wherever they're showing Memorial Cup coverage. That is where you can watch that. Great team for the Edmonton Oil Kings, like I mentioned. And the other thing about the Edmonton Oil Kings as well is they have a lot of homegrown talent. Now, yes, they are top loaded with the guys like the Caden Gouleys, who they traded for, Justin Sordiff they traded for as well, Simon Kubicek they traded for too. But a lot of their top end guys and a lot of the guys who went out there and won the title this year for the Oil Kings are homegrown. Logan Dowhaniak was going to be the Oil Kings' number 1 defenseman or offensive defenseman, most likely, for the Oil Kings before they traded for Caden Gooley. He came in and Dowhaniak just said, okay, here's the reins, my man. And he just sat there and eventually actually scored the game-winning goal in Game 4 to bring it back to Edmonton with like 3 seconds left in that game. Dylan Gunther, as we already mentioned, Jake Neighbors, Jalen Lipin, Carter Such, Jakob Demick, Sebastian Kosha as well, all homegrown talents for the Edmonton Oil Kings. Great development group they have over there. And just the thing that you really notice about the Edmonton Oil Kings is that they have a system. They play with the system. And you saw it on just even the penalty kill. Just watching the penalty kill, it seemed like a penalty kill of an NHL team, not of this major junior hockey team with 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. That's what really sets this team apart. So if you're a hockey fan in Edmonton, make sure you tune in to the Edmonton Oil Kings because it is fun hockey. The other thing I do want to mention about the Oil Kings and what is really important, I guess, for this run and for the Oil Kings is that this is kind of 3 years in the making. And that is what you kind of hear a lot of the guys on that team who have been here for the last couple of years keep saying. Sebastian Coach has said it after on the ice in his post-game interview. It's been a long 3 years, and it's 3 years coming. Before the pandemic hit, the Oil Kings were this good as well. They were the best team in the WHL. They were running up the rankings in the CHL. And then COVID hit, the season didn't end. Then WHL, the next season, 2020, 2021, didn't have really a playoffs and didn't crown a champion or a Memorial Cup, obviously. And so now these kids are finally getting the opportunity to win together for the first time in 3 years. It's fantastic to see. And this is what hockey is about. One last thing as well. I know I keep saying one last thing. One last thing about the Oil Kings as well. If you did watch the game or if you have seen the photos, you may have noticed I almost said a Reinhardt jersey, a Reimer jersey, a Reimer 13 jersey out there for the Oil Kings and in their celebrations. That is for their former teammate who passed away in a car accident this past summer. Unfortunate for him, I should say. Unfortunate for the team and really tough for those guys to really have in the back of their heads. So just a beautiful touch. The interesting thing about that is the last time the Edmonton Oil Kings went on their Memorial Cup run, they too this story kind of gets to me. I have a little bit of a personal touch on it, but the thing about this team is that in 2014, the summer before, they also lost a teammate in Christian Pels, an Edmonton Oilers draft prospect. Wildly enough, actually took the time to message me every once in a while on Facebook Messenger and actually built a rapport. Unfortunately, when he went back to his native Latvia in the summer, he did tragically pass away. And when they won the Memorial Cup that year, they always had Pels's jerseys with them. They had the hashtag play for Pelsy. So don't want to say it's a little reminiscent, but definitely brings back a little bit of the emotions. Excuse me. That is where we're going to end the show today. Tomorrow, we're going to have a whole bunch, another draft profile as well. And we are also going to talk about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' season as well. We'll talk about him as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Oilers and making it your first listen every day. For your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On NHL, as Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you find your podcast. Alrighty, everybody, we will call it there. Hope you have a wonderful day, and stay safe, everybody. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.